Good afternoon, and thanks very much for this incredible opportunity. I'm here to talk about how you can own your future. Let me start by talking about one of the favorite novels of all time, which I read growing up as a kid, which is about A Tale of Two Cities. Have you read this book by any chance? What is so memorable about this book? What is most memorable about this book, or what makes this book one of the most epic pieces of English literature, is its opening lines. There has never been better opening lines ever written in the history of English literature. Let me walk you through the opening lines a bit. It says, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. We were all going direct to heaven, we were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period." Now, this book was set somewhere in the 19th century, and it was set in the era of the French Renaissance. And at that point of time, the citizens of these two cities of London and Paris, they faced contrasting emotions. For a set of citizens, they were very excited about the future because the regime change meant new opportunity, a better future for them. But for a set of citizens, they were very paranoid because they were part of the older regime. They were worried about what this future meant, whether they had a role in this future, what will happen to their livelihood, what will happen to their jobs, what will happen to their businesses. And you think about the business environment today, I see a lot of similarity. There is a set of companies who are doing extremely well, and there is a set of companies who are struggling. And I want to talk about A Tale of Two Companies. So the two companies I picked up for this conversation, and they represent hundreds of companies in each of these categories. On one end, you have a company like Ford Motor Company, a 116-year-old company, which does approximately about $160 billion in annual revenue, which is half the GDP of a country like Singapore. And despite that huge size, it grows at about 2.5% a year. It does reasonably well. It is also profitable. They make about $3.7 billion of net profit a year. It has been through a hell of a ride over the last few years, but it is profitable. And it is valued at about $41.3 billion. Now you contrast that with another company, Uber, which went public just about, 2 days ago. They're only making about $11 billion of revenue in a year. And guess what? They lose 15% of their revenues to losses every year. That means they lost $1.8 billion just in this last year, 2018. Now, what is so different about this company? Why do people value this company at $82 billion? $82 billion. Now, clearly, one part of it is the huge growth rate, the promise of growth, 43% growth that they've seen just in the last year alone. But there are also many other factors at play. Allow me to walk you through some of the key things that are shaping these companies that are impacting our future, impacting our careers. Let's start by looking at, when I started my career many, many years ago, you had two options. I grew up in India. So if you study in one of the best schools, the IIMs or the IITs of this world, you had a chance to work for the best companies, the IBMs or the in those days, General Motors of this world. And if you didn't do very well in school, then you ended up working for the smaller companies. And the business environment was relatively clear. The big companies would acquire the small companies, and they would get bigger. It was as simple as that. But over the last 20 years, the business environment has changed completely. You now have an environment where there are thousands of small companies. And guess what? These small companies have the same amount of access to capital, technology, infrastructure that the big companies have access to. It allows them to actually go and threaten some of the biggest companies. As a result of which, the big companies now are beginning to see this challenge of a death by 1,000 cuts. So they're not dying of heart attack. They're slowly bleeding to death. It is the concern of this death by 1,000 cuts that is keeping the Ford's market valuation at about $40-odd billion. Now, in this particular slide, you see it's a busy slide. It's about the fintech industry. And there are hundreds and thousands of companies who are all seeing the inefficiencies that exist in the financial services industry, the unhappiness that you and I have when we go to the banks. So they see an opportunity to innovate across the entire value chain. And just $32 billion of investment went into these startup companies who are looking at to change the future of the financial services industry. Now, this future that these startup companies are aiming to drive is also giving rise to a new phenomenon. And that phenomenon, I call it Innovate to Zero. To explain this concept of Innovate to Zero, let's go back about 19 years. I don't know if you remember this song. Who let the dogs out? Who? I don't know if you remember this song. Do you guys remember? Now, it was a very popular song in that year. It was the top 10 song of the year 2000. It was produced by this company called S-Curve Music. Yeah? And they invested a lot of money in making this video. It was the best video of that time. They spent $3 million in making this video. Right? And it went on to do well. This particular album made $30 million of revenue in that year. Now you push forward another 19 years. The same company, S-Curve Music, made another video, made another song. In this case, they promoted Andy Grammer. And Andy Grammer made a song called Honey, I'm Good. Right? And Andy Grammer actually spent almost zero money in making this song. Because what he did is he put entire lyrics on the internet. He invited celebrities and friends around the world to sing the lyrics and hold placards for how many years they were in a monogamous relationship. Now, this song went on to become immensely successful. For the same music album company, for the same music producer, S-Curve Music, this was a top 10 song in the year 2015. It was top 10 song in the charts globally. Guess how much money they made in the year 2015? They made only $3 million. A $30 million industry has gone down to $3 million in a span of 15 years. Our consumption of music has gone up manifold. Everybody carries music in their pocket thanks to the mobile phone, right? And yet the value of the industry has gone down. What we have done is we have made the entire value chain far more efficient. We made it so efficient, we removed all the middle layers, the layers associated with making CDs, the distribution, the retail, etc. And this is not limited to the music industry. Unfortunately, it is happening all around us every single day, right? So about 10 years ago, WhatsApp came up and said, why are we spending so much of money on SMSs? Why should you be paying for it? Let me innovate it to zero. You don't need to pay for SMSs. You already have the connection. A few years later, they said, oh, SMS is zero. Everybody loves it. Let's also innovate to zero for voice. Why should anybody pay for voice? That has become zero. Now, guess what? Today, they're saying, why are you even paying for data? Let me make that also zero. So a company in Singapore, Circles.life, offers you free data. And that too, how much? 1 GB of data. If you're a prudent user, you don't need more than that. Innovate to zero. So innovate to zero is a premise that all these startup companies around the world are saying there is considerable inefficiencies in the Fords, the IBMs of this world, that we need to innovate it to zero and create new ways of doing value. And this is what this fourth industrial revolution is all about. This is what we hear all the time, in the media saying, hey, there is a big change about fourth industrial revolution. Essentially, it is nothing but, we have seen this in history. We moved from the steam engine to the second industrial revolution, automation, where Ford Motor Company said everybody should own a car. They automated the entire processes. Then we had the third industrial revolution, and now we are to the fourth industrial revolution. So what is the key difference in the fourth industrial revolution? What makes it so different? How do you understand? What is the litmus test to say I am participating in the fourth industrial revolution? In my opinion, the fourth industrial revolution, it should pass this litmus test. It should deliver exponential growth. Many a time when we plan our growth, when we plan our next year's income, we all say, okay, I will invest a little bit more resources. I'll add 2 more salespeople, or I'll build another office. And what do I get in return? I get a slightly better return. So that is the blue line that we follow. But the fourth industrial revolution is not about a linear growth anymore. It's about an exponential growth. Because Uber got an exponential growth right from 0 to $82 billion of valuation in less than 10 years. So if your business strategy does not meet the litmus test of the fourth industrial revolution of an exponential growth, Your job is at the risk of being innovated to zero. Your company is at the risk of being innovated to zero. You are being innovated to the risk of death by 1,000 cuts. And unfortunately, 90% of our companies, businesses, and careers are all in that category of being innovated to zero. How do we go about making that transition? How do we make sure the economies, the societies, the business, the governments can actually lead the businesses effectively through this change? So I came through this, as I studied these companies, as I studied careers, to say, how do I effectively manage this transition? So I said, okay, what are the key pillars of success? What makes these companies tick? How do I make sure I succeed? I identified 3 key elements. One is about technology. Second is about business model. And the third one is about financial strategy. Ultimately, all of these underpinnings should be built on an element of purpose, because I think that's what drives human emotion. That's what gets the best in people. So let's take the understanding of what does it mean in terms of vision and strategy. To understand this well, I said, let's go back to Ford Motor Company. So way back when Henry Ford had this vision, his vision in those days was every Ford Motor employee should be able to own a car. Right? And what a great job he did. He pushed the entire global industry so much that we have so many cars, there is no place to move. We have traffic jams all over the world. We have built a world of complete inefficiency over this period of time. It's time for a new vision for this world to emerge. So what we have now is a set of companies who are saying, hey, is the future of mobility a James Bond kind of a mobility? Is the Tesla where he's saying, let's make it electric vehicle, let's make it efficient, let's make it autonomous. Everybody should have a great car. Or is the future of mobility a Jason Bond kind of a mobility? Point A to point B in the most efficient manner, saving environment, managing traffic, and getting to meeting the outcome more efficiently. Right? The other way to look at the future of the vision that we are trying to aspire to, let's take the case of healthcare. Right? Bulk of our spending today as individuals and companies and insurance companies is all in the treatment of healthcare. Amazon says it can predict what you're going to buy. Amazon is ready today to actually ship the product to you even before you buy it. And the product will wait outside your doorstep for you to click yes, and they will give it to you. Because they understand that. They understand they can predict that to happen. Why can't we innovate our healthcare system? Isn't the value in the healthcare system in keeping us healthy, in keeping us well, rather than in treating us after we fall sick? That is an incredible opportunity. And that is what the companies of the future are chasing, moving away from treatment to prevention to wellness. So, there are companies who are also setting very high standards. And companies like Amazon are saying, hey, yeah, vision of mobility is great, but man, I should push the thinking even further. What makes Amazon so exciting is they are living the future 10 years into the future. They have a flying warehouse 30,000 feet above the ground. That is their vision. From there, they will use small drones to deliver parcels to your doorstep. Why? Because they think it will be environmentally friendly. And it will come to you in a matter of minutes. Now, they may not necessarily realize this vision, but this vision helps guide them to drive a thinking around strategy and how to make it possible. Right? Moving from the discussion on the vision and purpose, we've got to move to the discussion on technology. Because what is enabling this fourth industrial revolution is the power of technology. And there are a range of technologies that we hear about all the time, right? From artificial intelligence to big data to, to autonomous cars, etc. But at the heart of this is the humble mobile phone. And we still are in day one. We still are in day one about the power and potential of the mobile phone and what we can do with it. To illustrate that, let me tell you a story about Facebook. Way back in 2012, Facebook went IPO. When it went IPO, its stock price was $36, just like Uber's stock price was $44 yesterday. The very next day, the stock went down. Everybody said Facebook will not do well. Nobody is using it on the mobile. The only change that Facebook did is they made Facebook a mobile-first company. Today, nobody in the world uses Facebook in any other medium other than the mobile phone. What it has done is it has increased our interaction with Facebook by 100-fold. So every business should embrace this concept of mobile first. How do I drive the future mobile first? And I think we are still in day one of being enabling that vision. So it starts with technology, and then it moves on to the conversation on business model. Because it's not just about technology, it's about how you apply this technology in unique ways to create value. As we study the business model, I see three distinct shifts associated with business model. The number one is we are moving away from this emphasis of ownership of assets to consumption of assets. The future generation will not own cars, they will not own phones, they'll pretty much not own everything. They will like to consume it, and they will like to pay it on a consumption basis. We are entering a subscription economy. And as I discuss more and more of this, people always say, oh, that's not possible. Business cannot go in a subscription economy. So I put together examples of how companies are innovating and saying, I will even do something as simple as underwear as a service. Because there is value in customization, delivery on time, and also taking care of a thing that you usually don't like to go and do, especially men's underwear, right? So moving on from the business strategy to the business model to the technology, the final aspect about what makes Uber so successful. Uber is a great technology company. But what we forget that a technology company should also be associated finally with a financial strategy. Uber's valuation of $82 billion also came with an investment of $24 billion. If you didn't have the appetite to invest the $24 billion in driving this new vision, then clearly Uber would not have been there. And the same thing applies to you and me in our careers, in our businesses. I see a great deal of big companies making the shift and investing heavily in technology to drive the fourth industrial revolution, but are you accompanying that with a financial strategy? Because if you are not willing to invest to change our mindsets, then we will be left behind. So, in summary, I used to work for a management consulting firm. I spent about 20 years with them, and I enjoyed incredible success over the last 20 years. But I realized I was facing the prospect of a death by 1,000 cuts. We were not growing. We were growing at very low single digits. Profits were going down. And I saw the opportunity. I see an opportunity to help companies, individuals, and governments actually make this effective transition to the fourth industrial revolution. I see that we can leverage the power of content, technology, subscriptions to be able to drive those insights to individual societies, businesses, small and medium businesses, large businesses, to help drive that transition and change. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to share this.